Created for changes, chosen for greatness. All things are possible. Be all you can be in Christ. Maximize your life. Maximize your life. All things are possible. Be all you can be in Christ. Maximize your life. Maximize your life. All things are possible. Be all you can be in Christ.
Good morning and welcome to Maximize Your Life, Maxlife. My name is Peter Digby and with me is my co-host, Theodora.
Hello, good morning.
We began this series of broadcast looking at the life of a man called Nehemiah who saw a need, rose up and captured a vision, laid a plan, mobilized others to join him in accomplishing this great task. Now, the steps he took are actions that can be applied to life in general. And we have thought it worthwhile to have a conversation with you, our listener, about this man's life. Because we believe anyone can become a good leader if you will just study what good leaders do. This particular week, we are looking at how this man faced challenges and how he faced discouragement and how he overcame ridicule. Because in life, everyone faces discouragement at some point or another. From time to time, life will throw us a curveball, confront us with periods of darkness. But it's important that we always stand assured that just like driving through a tunnel, if we keep going, we are making progress towards the light. In the section of the story of Nehemiah we're going to look at today, he shows us that when tough times come, never lose sight of the good, even in the bad experience. Remember that at the end of the day, tough times don't last, but tough people do. And persistence is what really pays at the end of the time. The funny thing, Theodora, is that, you don't get to develop persistence in good times.
Not at all.
It's only in tough times that your mettle is really tried and tested. And that's what we find about Nehemiah here. He had the support of the king and, he did all the planning and he did all that. But as we will see, as we look into what happened here, even all the best planning doesn't stop naysayers.
No.
And people who just kind of, they just can't see what you're seeing. They just don't believe in your plans. And they just want to stop you.
Resistance is universal. Resistance is a normal part of life. We can't be discouraged or lose heart when it pounces on us, as it would pounce on anyone else. Whenever you feel it rearing its ugly head, you must have at the ready a verse of scripture or a testimony or something you've gone through before that has given you courage to move forward.
Yeah. That was something Nehemiah did, because he referred the people back to past successes. Listener, perhaps you're going through discouragement or disappointment right now. I want you to take courage. Don't give up. Don't stop. Often the darkest hour is before dawn. As long as you keep going, remember you are making progress towards the light.
That's that beautiful film we watched. We watched it together.
Yeah.
Remember, Shawshank Redemption.
Yes. That's the classic.
Oh, it's amazing.
That's the classic.
And there is something there, it says, you have to grow sometimes through dirt. Actually, I
come
don't
out
want to
into
use
what?
the word to come out into clean waters, because he had to go through the sewage system to come out into clean waters
Yes.
before he got his escape.
So many lessons in
So,
that
the
that
Shawshank
film.
Redemption.
Shawshank,
And
just a classic.
That's a classic also on courage and
Yes,
persistence. And knowing that resistance will come, but there must be a way out. There's always a way. You can tunnel through, you can go over or go out under,
But you're going
you'll
through.
come out. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. Just keep looking towards that light.
You know, I love this quote by this American writer, Zane Grey. He once said, and I quote, "These are the tests of true greatness: to bear up under loss, to fight the bitterness or defeat and the weakness of grief, to be a victor over anger, to smile when tears are close, to resist disease and evil men and base instincts, to hate hate and to love love, to go on when it will seem good to die, to seek ever the glory and the dream, to look up with unquenchable faith to something ever more about to be. These things any man can do, and so be great." Listener,
These things
anyone
any man can do,
and so
be
be
great.
great. Dear listener, I want you to know that there is greatness in each one of us if we can just tap into that grace that refuses to quit, that refuses to give up, that has a purpose and a passion. And these are the things we have learned about Nehemiah. He was a man who passionately carried the burden of repairing the broken down walls of Jerusalem. And, you know, the last time we talked about the importance of having this kind of burden, this passion. You mentioned Hananiah, his brother.
Hanani, yes.
Hanani, his brother, actually brought that message to him, but you know he wasn't that concerned.
Anyone. We all see problems. We all see issues on our campuses, in our families, at home, with our children, and sometimes we don't. Sometimes we don't want any confrontation, and we just want to keep away from it. But somebody has to rise up, and that's the person who can be called a leader, who has the courage to say, no, there must be a change. We have to do something about this. Look at all the things happening all over the world now. We need courageous leadership.
I mean, over the news in the past few weeks, we've heard about the Oxfam scandal. We've heard about the shootings
in
America, and things keep happening
young
all the
people
time.
being wasted.
Yeah.
So what do?
Yeah.
We need a leader who has the right to say, well, if it's guns, this is the way to go. If it is in the finances, this is the way to go.
Let's take a cue from Nehemiah. First thing, Nehemiah trusted in God.
Yes.
And then he prayed earnestly.
Yes.
He trusted in God. He prayed earnestly. Then number two, he identified with the problem. You know, if you know, the Bible said he wept. He identified with the problem. Number three, he approached people of influence. He approached the king. He approached somebody, a key principal person who could make or break the undertaking. He sought audience with someone who had a clout to do something about it.
Oh, well, that's all because of passion.
Yeah.
Without that, and that's what we are trying to communicate with our audience today, that there must be passion for these things. Look at that quote from the American author. I noted some of the things there. He said, resist disease, go on, press on to do something, even when it seems good to die, rather than pressing on.
Yeah.
To me, that's my takeaway from that. And that's what a leader will need to do. This man, Nehemiah, we've been talking about, and I mentioned that it's it's a name that we don't normally give kids these days. I believe after this broadcast, so a baby will be named Nehemiah. But in the lighter mood, his neck was on the line. He could have been executed for attempting to ask for the restoration of the walls of Jerusalem. But he had the courage. He put his life on the line. These days, it seems as if we prefer our comfort zone and to protect it rather than step out. Yeah. And remember the Maximum Impact Students Association of the Sunderland University. Their word is stand out.
Yeah.
We must stand out. As young people, choose to stand out. And
stand out for what is right.
What is right. Remember the Rudyard Kipling poetry poem we read last week. Last episode.
Yeah.
If everyone is losing it, you are going to lose it.
Yeah, stand out.
Stand
out. And
out.
it was also very unselfish. It was unselfishly devoted to the task at hand. You know, if you look at this story, Nehemiah wasn't out to get something for himself. He was quite comfortable. He was just passionately disturbed and we'll see later on what happened. He was passionately disturbed about what was happening in Jerusalem. And when he got that breakthrough with the king, he went, assessed the situation, and then he met with the people and cast a vision. He cast a vision. He was persuasive rather than demanding. You know, he convinced the people. I'm sure that was the same argument he used to convince the king that an improved city will be good for them, good for the king, good for the country, good for the glory of God. And he also encouraged the people with reference to past successes of these people. He encouraged them by saying, look, we're not always slaves. We're not always like this. You know, we could do better than this. And I think that is a word of challenge to every one of us as we listen and as we share this conversation with you. We should always find a point of asking ourselves, you know, can I do better than this?
Yes.
And I think that was what Nehemiah took to the people. He was practical in his thinking. He was practical also in his action. He made workable plans and he followed through on those plans. Because he was a man who was practical, who was hands-on, you know, he received buy-in from the people. They were ready to follow him. He organized them into groups.
Yeah. Talking about all this, the practical application of it for you, our audience, and ourselves, do you have an extensive period of time set aside, either each month or each week, for planning? I just wanted to give the thought to that. It will help in progressing, in pushing forward as a leader. And then the next question is, sometimes you need to step back in order to envision your people. You probably have your children. That's a form of leadership role. You probably have staff or colleagues at work, departmental heads and so on, students, leaders. You need to step back, get a plan, get an understanding of what the situation is and all the key players, and then envision your people. And then also ask the question, who else could you involve who is not currently active? So every member of the team gets involved. You know, when you are able to, nobody is put down. Nobody is ignored as, oh, well, this is just... Because at the end of the day, from the scriptures, every member of the body is important, relevant. Yeah. This morning, interestingly, I woke up thinking of this kiddies song. My shoulders, my knees, my toes. My head, my shoulders, my knees, my toes. And I was laughing. Can you wake up in the morning, the first thought? And that's my... I guess my legs were aching me from all the journeys I made yesterday. But, do you know, immediately a thought came to me that now this song says, my head, my shoulders, my knees, my toes. My head, my toes. That they're all relevant.
Everything.
Every part, toes, tiny toes. They are all relevant. So combined together, we can achieve a lot. We
Yes.
can do much more. And
Yes.
a good leader will bring everybody on board.
Yes. And let me just round up this section by saying that you can expect to win if you have a plan. So whatever your objective, make a plan to win, and then you can expect to win. Nehemiah was such an initiator. He was such a mover. And the key section in the key sentence in the section where we are looking into this morning, which takes into account the 2nd chapter up to the 6th chapter, is the people had a mind to work. The people had a mind to work. Nehemiah was an initiator. Are you an initiator? Do you have around you a people with a mind to work? Is this true of your family? Is it true of your church? Is it true of the city administrators? This man was a hands-on kind of person, continually working with and encouraging the people. And there are some qualities about people who are initiators, who not only initiate a plan, but persistently push through until that plan is accomplished. They must know exactly what they want. Someone said, desire is the starting point of all achievement. Desire is what prompts initiators to push themselves to act. Sometimes you must just take yourself by the scruff of the neck, shake yourself loose from the spire and just go forward. Each step might be difficult, each step might be painful, but initiators take the risk and they are not afraid to make mistakes. For instance, in this story, Nehemiah wasn't afraid to mobilize men who were neither trained soldiers nor professional builders into the field to fight and to build. And Theodora, the big question is, what do you do when opposition shows up? In the face of your best plans and your best preparation, what happens when opposition shows up, when, distraction comes? You find that most true leaders will have to deal with distraction at every stage of progress.
Yes.
Let me introduce some of the characters that Nehemiah had to deal with. This man called Sanballat in this story was the governor of Samaria. That was the region that was north of Judah. And Sanballat nurtured secret ambitions to also become governor of Judah as well. His deputy was called Tobias, and together they formed a formidable team. Now there were other players in the mix, like the Ashdodites, who were actually Philistines. Also the Arabians and Ammonites. There were other tribes from the east. And none of these people wanted the walls of Jerusalem to be rebuilt. So you find Sanballat and Tobias, historically, I'm just giving a little background to this story.
But, we can always see the realities of these things because there's really nothing new under the sun.
Exactly.
So as we listen to this historical account, we can always see the relevant practical application in our day-to-day lives,
in present
in our
time,
workplace, in our classrooms, in our homes.
Yes, and I mean it's
like we said earlier, resistance is universal.
Yes, and that resistance to change is so prevalent. It's so prevalent in life. Once someone wants to kind of break out of the mold. And every success, every advancement in life has always been because somebody just decided to break out of the mold, began to think out of the box.
In fact, I read from an article recently, and the guy said, if once you try to raise your head above the
parapet,
the group,
be ready to be shot
ready to be shot at. And that's leadership. You just have to prepare for it, because resistance can express itself in many different ways.
Yeah,
it can express. I mean, it could be procrastination, just delays and so on, or even rationalization.
Yes.
Why do you want to do it? Why do you want to upset everyone? You are making us all unhappy. Oh, we are comfortable as it is.
Exactly. Sanballat and Tobias, they were in charge. They were in charge of the status quo.
Exactly.
So they didn't want anything to upset the apple cart.
Yeah.
They knew of Nehemiah's mandate from the king and how it will affect the region. Now, let me give you a little background to this. A proper wall around the city would increase commerce, will give more merchants the confidence to stay over in the city. This will increase both the economic and political power of that city and that region. And, that was what these people were resisting. They didn't want that power to come into the hands of the Jews. Now, there was also some kind of racial intolerance at play here, because about 300 years before Nehemiah came to Jerusalem, the northern kingdom of Israel was conquered, and most of the people were carried away. Sargon of Assyria now repopulated the region with captives from various other lands. It was these captives over time who intermarried with the few Israelites remaining in the land to form the mixed race of people called the Samaritans. Unfortunately, when Zerubbabel and the first group of exiles returned to Jerusalem, and then later Ezra brought another group, they would have nothing to do with these Samaritans because they considered them racially impure. And so gradually relationship between these people grew progressively worse until it became full-blown out hatred. And so you had something else in the mix there. Because one of the strategies, one of the strategies of the enemy is to divide and conquer. Once you have a divided people, once you have hatred, once you have, those are the origins of war and bloodshed and things like that. Once you have division and conflict, fellowship and progress are destroyed.
Exactly.
And Sanballat and Tobias were senior managers. They understood human psychology, that when people become demoralized, their resistance is weakened and they are liable to give up when intimidated or threatened. And they also engage lies. They told some lies, they told some half-truths to oppose Nehemiah. That comes with the territory.
And that comes with it. Fake news is not what we have in our generation.
That comes with the territory. And their aim was to lure the people into fear.
Well, let's bring it back to our present situation and practical application in the light of these things we've heard. One, as a child, I remember I acted the play, united we stand, divided we fall. When you put people together, and then also people together, they can stand and resist every confrontation, but once there is no unity, there you have all manner of evil taking place. Then, of course, the scriptures also says you stand in a place of commanded blessing when you are united. But before I go further, in the light of all that Peter has said, I just want us to step back a little and think about this, about our personal situation. How does resistance express itself to you? How does it present itself to you? Because once you can identify it, you are making progress as a leader, because then you can have plans to resolve it. And being a week where the Christians celebrate the beginning of the Lent season, and Christ going to the cross, I'll just bring that question in this morning. Is the idea of personal cross bearing, carrying your own cross, does it bring a shift in the mindset for you? In the list, being a leader, and then you are told to carry your own cross. We know that Christ died for us on the cross. But so why is he asking us to take our own cross and follow him? Is this idea of personal cross affecting your mind shift? Is it giving you a different mind shift? Please think about it, friends.
Now let me just say a few things about that. Sanballat and Tobias in this story, they began with ridicule and sarcasm, just to discourage the workers. Ridicule can really cut deeply and hurt. And many people are discouraged when people become sarcastic and become really nasty with words. I was with a gentleman in his 70s a couple of days ago, and he was telling me why he stopped going to church. And he had gone to church with his sister. They were just, young teenagers. And his sister had put on a hat that she loved so much and she was so proud of. But the people who sat in the row behind tore her apart. Just while the sermon was going on, while everybody was singing the hymn, they just kept going on about this hat. And he said he and his sister left that church in tears. And since that day, he had not returned to church. It's unbelievable what words can do. When people begin to ridicule and how hurtful and how hateful it can be. But Nehemiah, instead of trading insults, he prayed and continued working. When you are being mocked, when you are being ridiculed, when you are being criticized for what you know is right, refuse to respond in kind. Refuse to be discouraged. What prayer does is that praying and telling God about it will open your heart and mind to receive the strength you need to continue. I wanted to know if there are broken down walls of relationship or vision or whatever it is in your life. Nothing is impossible when we set our mind to it, when we engage with God helping us. Attempting to accomplish any major thing in life can be tiring. It can be daunting, yes, especially when you there's a big vision. Because the more progress you make, the more opposition you face. In this case of Nehemiah, what you found was that remarkably within a short time, they had built the wall round the city up to half of its intended height. Of course, that was the lower part, so it was easier to build. And this progress made the opposition to realize these people were very serious about building the wall. And that increased the level of hatred and attack.
Can we leave our audience with this prayer, Peter?
Yeah.
Especially being Sunday morning before you go. There is this word from Apostle Paul that says, "Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us, to him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever." Father, when you open the doors of opportunity for your kingdom, may we have the courage of Nehemiah to step out in faith in spite of fear. May we remember as we enter into this new week that we cannot out-ask you, so that we will come to you boldly, requesting great things for your kingdom and for our families, for our communities, for our campuses. As we pray, prepare us for whatever work you will have us do.
Till we see you next week, this is Peter
Jesus' name.
and Theodora saying have a fantastic week and maximize your life.